Welcome to the RL Canning Tech Perspectives podcast, where we explore the latest trends in IT with expert perspectives and practical advice to help you prepare for what's next. In this episode, we have special guest Dr. Ciero, an information security auditor with Kirkpatrick Price, and discuss the impact of AI on cybersecurity. Let's dive in.
I'm here today with Dr. Ciero, an information security auditor at Kirkpatrick Price. Chris holds a doctorate in information assurance with a focus on artificial intelligence. His work has helped modernize key security standards from NIST to SOC 2 Type 2, and even emerging AI frameworks like ISO 42001 and the NIST AI Risk Management Framework. He leads AI impact analysis projects across healthcare, finance, SaaS, and is probably the most passionate person I know around enabling safe and scalable AI adoptions. I'm absolutely thrilled to be speaking with you today, Chris, and appreciate you joining.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to be here.
So let's jump right in. AI, it's everywhere. It's in every conversation I feel like we have around IT and IT security. From your perspective, being in the industry so long, how has AI changed the landscape of cybersecurity just in the last few years?
The landscape has shifted more towards the rush to adopt it, if that makes any sense. In the rush to adopt AI, there's, I think, been some sidestepping, some misunderstanding and miscommunication as to what exactly AI is. I think that in the industry, this produces a fundamental shift, if you will, or need for a shift in thinking towards proper fundamentals when adopting anything new, say a business impact analysis before doing so. Strategic thought towards what is it we want to achieve here, and is our company ready for it? That's the biggest, I think, for most organizations, is we want the new shiny thing in play, and now we want you to do it, so go and do it, IT. And it's like, whoa, wait a second here. We need to slow down and see, are we following change management protocols? Are we making sure our data is there? And then we can get into the really fun, newer topics of, are we worried about model drift or prompt injection? So it's just a shifting of existing thought from a framework that's existing to maybe a newer one that has overlap with that. I see that in data governance, and I see the need for thought at the leadership levels, the stakeholder levels, the executive levels, of being able to not get that new toy just yet. Let's think about it a little bit, do some test runs, and then we can really see where this can take us.
Yeah, absolutely. We're preaching a lot of that, make sure you have a good foundation in place before you leap in, because you said a rush towards AI. I've called it AI FOMO. Like there's this fear of missing out when it comes to AI, or that folks are worried they're behind. CIOs need to have an AI plan, and they're tossing some of the normal process and justification and analysis to the wayside in pursuit of AI quickly. And so what are they missing when it comes to AI threats? How is AI different than the other items they may be deploying or familiar with deploying in their environment?
I've had a lot of thinking about this, and my thought for today, based on the experience and research that I've done and working with multiple clients across multiple sectors, is that fundamentally there really isn't that much that's different in the pipelines. There's that overlap effect. Again, as I mentioned about those fundamentals, but having people lose that fear of AI, not necessarily the rush to adoption, but the fear to actually use it as it's meant to be used, to understand it, to get over that fear of to adopt it appropriately, safely, securely, with your business sector's processes involved. The newer threats are, if you don't have those fundamentals and you don't use proper deployment methods with, let's say, the NIST AI Risk Management Framework, then prompt injection will likely happen. We've read horror stories already about some of these on data spillage and leakage. And it's just kind of funny to me that a chat bot on a website could potentially do this, but it seems viable that you could potentially find yourself at the end of a fine or a fee or loss of product as a result of somebody doing a prompt injection and figuring a workaround to your contractual obligations. It's new, but not new. I hate to say that, but the newness is in the technology itself. And how do we address these risks? Well, we go back to the frameworks. We go back to our secure safety fundamentals, our ethical purpose and use, our mission statements for our companies. And we move forward with those thoughts in mind. And I think that will help us achieve successful results with those newer aspects, newer products like Azure AI Content Safety, let's say, as an example. It's learning those new tools to help protect you from yourself with AI in general.
You touched on a number of good topics there. I think that we are seeing folks run into it and just kind of not follow that same rigor or process or analysis of a architectural review board, a vetting the different vendors and how they're going to handle and consume the data, things like that. So I think that's important to make sure that they're not throwing all their processes, procedures, and controls to the wayside. Treat this just like they would anything else. But they have to remember that AI can be social engineered almost, right? It can be tricked. In the example you said of prompt injection, they can use that AI and kind of manipulate it in ways to either grant it access or grant them access to areas they may not be able to get to. So, how do folks protect against that? How is that? What can they do to prevent that type of action?
Yeah, this is a great question about being engineered or somebody socially engineering. Social engineering's been around for a long time. And who would have thought at this point in time that we would be letting people socially engineer against an AI or an agent or a chatbot? But this is where we're at. It's the new phishing, and
Yeah.
so people are using their nefarious, innovative ways to test us, I guess. Agents can be tricked into leaking data, like I said, executing unintended actions. The solutions are layered: input validation, context isolation, human in the loop oversight, which is my big personal favorite.
Mm.
You need to have somebody in there to help manage that as a shifting of the work. You need to have somebody who understands your data sets, your data lineage, your data real estate, how we're going to be using this data, private or otherwise. And that's going to help you protect the organization with those innovations that come along from people trying to pick at what you've got out there as far as
Yeah.
LMMs or chatbots go.
Yeah, I love that. It's the new phishing. It's the new way that they can be nefarious and kind of trick folks into, in this case, an AI to giving them information they shouldn't. And you,
It's
you touched on a topic there, the human in the loop accountability in that model. We've had many customers that have come to us and said, "Hey, I believe AI can actually eliminate my service desk," or "How do I eliminate my service desk with AI?" And what we're telling folks is it'll be more of an evolution, not a revolution, that it's going to take time. And they need to be preparing for that ultimate future of taking their agents from in the process to on the process, or to use your more eloquent term, that human in the loop accountability to
right.
monitor and manage these and control the drifts or hallucinations that can happen. And is that approach valid, or how should organizations be thinking about controlling that drift and hallucinations, or effectively monitoring and managing these AIs?
Having that human in a loop, as we're saying it here, is extremely important. AI isn't here to take over. I believe that it's more symbiotic than it is parasitic. And we hear a lot of fearful,
Hmm.
or read a lot of fearful arguments in the press about how it's going to take everybody's jobs. And my belief, based on what I've seen so far, is that it's going to shift work. If it's going to take your job, then you might want to become an agentic repair person in
Yeah.
AI. You're going to be watching as a human in the loop to make sure that these agents are stacking or self-repairing, which is another conversation we've had. Somebody still has to watch, somebody still has to repair it when it hangs up. Entropy, hallucinations, drift, somebody fishing at the outer perimeter trying to get back in, using that defense in depth approach and having the watchers watch, the monitors monitor, and the auditors audit,
Yeah.
right? Will get us to a good, sound, quality product that shows a return on investment for the overall business, but actually achieves the results that we desire it to. And you're statistically, metrically going to have a better chance of success implementing ISO 42001 with a good staff, a good set of people like you and I to help it get there. It's the art of the scientific method is being knowledgeable that it's a process, as you said, an evolution of a process there to grow and learn and change and alter, beta test
Yeah.
and evolve. So I'll stop there, but I'm excited about that topic, and I don't see it going away anytime soon. It will always have to have somebody in there, and I've just accepted the fact that I'm just going to continue learning the rest of my life, and I enjoy it.
I think it's a promising thing for folks that are in a service desk role today, and that they should be preparing and for that eventual evolution. The problem is probably going to get worse before it gets better in terms of AI entropy and just agent expansion. there's more to manage and monitor now. I think you'll eventually see just some natural consolidation that'll happen over time, but it's going to take a while. I believe it was a Gartner article where they talked about guardian agents, so AIs that were specifically designed to monitor and govern other AI agents to ensure that they were working within the guardrails and, aligned with the organizational goals. So do you see these guardian agents being the solution, or is it still going to be human oversight, or will we eventually get to the point where AI can actually monitor AI effectively?
What I've seen out there as far as it goes is that there's going to need to be continuous oversight. There's going to be some variable that it hasn't taken into account where you'll need somebody to go in there and reset it or alter it. We are dealing with Copilot and ChatGPT, and I think we've already seen still problems with iterations as they come out. Yes, they're faster, but at what cost? Coding, development, real people. Are there other people out there that are affecting these changes without oversight and proper process and procedure? So you don't just implement something as intricate as that on the fly. Some of the research on agentic AI, the companies treat it like a tool and not like an identity. But what you have to take into account there is that if it's acting autonomously as an agent, we have to let it make decisions and interact with sensitive data. We need to make sure that there's logging, identity and access management and oversight. You don't want it getting into something that it's not allowed to, either through a social engineering prompt injection attack or something like
Yeah.
that. You want to make sure that agentic AI is treated as a tool. And so if it's a tool, usually you effectively think, okay, well, there's somebody holding that tool. And I believe that, yes, it will still be a human in the loop approach.
Agreed. You need to have someone who's going to act and kind of chaperone or shepherd this AI, especially as it's changing so rapidly. I know that's something that customers are asking us about. Is many had gone and pursued kind of their own internal homegrown AI solution, and now with others like ChatGPT, Copilot, Gemini, Claude, all of these that are pretty rapidly changing in terms of their capabilities. Is there an AI model that you tend to recommend more than others or that works better than others? I guess to ask it more simplistically, is an organization safer putting Copilot in place on their website versus a custom built agent? I would assume yes, but what's your input?
If it's critical behavior that, is intrinsic, getting your company's product out to market quickly, efficiently, and make all that money, I still am going to say carefully adopt Copilot or Chat GPT or whatever you're using, and utilize your defense in depth, whatever frameworks you're following. Those methodologies won't fail you here either. And then if you get into more of those approaches like 42001, the NIST AI risk management framework, whatever your purview, regional or global, you're going to have a path to follow. And that's going to give you the results that you need to find out whether this is worth your while, whether you want to bring it back in-house. Now, that's a question I haven't asked Copilot. If I wanted to, could I create my own Azure AI and take the data sets from Copilot and bring it over so that I can then really start to manipulate the system? And I also ask questions like, where and what are they using for the Copilot data? And chat, I know a little bit about where ChatGPT gets their data, but that really gets to some really deep levels of thought that might be for another topic, a conversation for us later on. But I think that is, generally speaking, one of the better paths to train up an organization on. Copilot is inside, and I like it. I've started using Claude, which is AWS. It seems pretty nice as well, but I still have to set parameters. I still ask it questions and make sure, okay, you're not using any of my data outside of the organization, right? Don't use anything outside. Don't search outside. Don't use this to search outside, just to set those parameters in place. Because again, it's still going to be work. There's a level of handoff in the shared responsibility matrix where we still have ownership up to that point. And when we create that handoff, you still have a concern. You get into vendor risk management. So anyways.
Yeah. I'm actually coming around to Copilot. I think Microsoft's probably going to run their normal playbook where they're going to get 90% of the functionality and they're going to bake it into their licensing structure in E5 already. And so folks are going to want to move towards that. It's just going to be the easiest path. And I know over the last, probably 6 months, their connector capability to Copilot has just grown exponentially. Like they started with a handful and now there's literally hundreds. And so that may be kind of the one agent to rule them all. just
Right.
because Microsoft will run their normal playbook. But I do like what you said around custom building your own. There's so much risk and there's so much effort and there's so much work that goes into that, that if that's not core to your business, it's probably not something that you should be pursuing or going after. If it's not core to your business, we try to guide customers to go with a trusted partner. And I think that AI is changing so rapidly that trying to race the open AIs or the Claudes or the Microsofts of the world to build your own, unless there is an absolute need for security or that's core to your software or your go-to-market solution, you probably should try to stick with some of those that are out of the box and just tweak and adjust them to your needs. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the roles that are involved on one side with having data scientists, an ethicist, a data ethicist, um, uh, an AI developer. It's a whole suite or team that you have to build
Yeah.
in order to do that. And so the total cost of ownership for that is a good bit higher. And again, yeah, I get that if you are actually AI and you're developing a product that is solely AI, absolutely, I'm all behind it. I want to get in there and look at it. I want to look at your data sets. I want to talk to the data scientists. I want to
Yeah.
see what they're doing to prevent bias and prompt injection. I don't see that too often in chat. If you do go with Copilot and you're looking at these models, check out the model lineage, the data governance, access
Yeah.
controls, logging and traceability. You still
Mhm.
have that ownership there. Is your data, potentially PII or PHI, depending what sector you're in. Intellectual property is also a concern, or
Yep.
confidential information. So these things all play a strong role in that fundamental aspect. But again, I don't disagree with you. Copilot, ChatGPT are kind of the ones that I'm most familiar with. Claude would be in there as well. Some of the others I've noticed lack of change control,
Mm.
and where something was unliked and therefore it was changed on the fly. And I don't see that as being scientific about the use of AI. If you're going to change it, you have to have a rollback plan. You have to know what you're changing, because you want to talk about drift. You don't really know those ramifications if you're making it on the fly. So
Yeah.
just my little 2 cents there. But yes, it's like I said, it's a good, safe place to start and get people to start using it and be less afraid. Yeah, don't put your social security number in your work Copilot. You know, HR's already probably got that safely
Yeah.
set off to the side somewhere, right? But just basic information security training classes, I think you can import or create your own. I think that
Yeah.
there's some availability, some training materials there too, to help get that adoption in there, because it is going to make you.
Yeah. Yeah. Even if you go with one of those kind of out of the box or, standard models that saves you a bunch of effort in terms of building out your own team, it still doesn't let you off the hook around the security, the PII controls, in the AI training and literacy of your end users to make sure they're not uploading secure data. That's a really good point. Is it may be the easy button, but you still need to be thinking of the security implications, data governance, etc. So it
Yeah,
doesn't let you off the hook on those.
yeah, your service desk, yeah, anonymization, all the fun stuff, right?
Yeah, yeah. So you mentioned vendors. I think this is a question that we have from many customers. What should they be looking at with vendors? I see a lot of examples where folks are signing agreements with AI partners or bringing in AI tools, and they're not asking questions about what's the underlying model, who owns the data, are you training off of my data, right? Things like that. And so, can you touch on that idea of when selecting an AI vendor, or what are some basic or practical steps that organizations should take around bringing in a new vendor or tool when it comes to AI?
Just vetting your vendor with your typical vendor management practices is with any good SOC 2 organization or
Yep.
ISO 1001. Make sure you're getting what you're paying for, that they're following these internal practices themselves. Ask for their SOC report, sign an NDA, and find out that they're using trusted service criteria for security, availability, confidentiality, hopefully processing integrity. You can get your hands on that with Microsoft relatively easily. That's one of the
Yeah.
reasons why I think we're all shifting towards Microsoft. Is you can go in there, if you're an officer of the company, you can get that NDA and you can look down Copilot and see where it comes from and what it's doing. You can look into this prior to purchasing and signing on, which is what I would absolutely recommend, even so much as to be able to speak to the data scientist or the data ethicist that might actually be working on the
Right.
AI, the ML, the neural network, whatever frame they're using
Yeah.
to vet that organization. Because again, as we've discussed, a lot of people say they're AI and maybe not necessarily so. Or if it's an
Yeah.
iteration of ChatGPT that you might be able to get cheaper through your own enterprise license, You got to check it out.
That's a very good point. I think that's the simple guidance that we do give customers is just ask questions about what model are they using, what are the controls, how will data be handled, and if they're hesitant or not transparent in terms of sharing that data, that's a risk. That's a red flag, right? That they should be concerned about that because, like you said, you can get that through many of these mainstream vendors in terms of what they're using or how they're handling those items. So that's a really good point. That ask the questions, be thinking about it, and just do your due diligence.
If you're
Um,
already in with somebody, some of the other things I might do there too would be check for some uptime statistics. If it's a key integral
Mm.
portion of your work, I would want to make sure that there wasn't a single point of failure. If that line goes down to that API that's connecting into my systems and subsystems, is that API secure on their end? Number one, is the API secure overall? I would hope so, right? And then again, as we've just discussed, the specifics on their side, are they using due diligence, the defense in depth approaches for whatever framework they're on? And you can also get that through questionnaires. You could put questionnaires
yeah.
in flight to them to make sure. That's when you have fun talking to legal and making sure the contract is hammered out. But those would be some other things too, because once you align yourself with something, you get vendor lock in, just like with anywhere else. You have to be careful about that. And you can end up losing a lot of money as a result of that if you're not careful.
Yeah. Yeah. Like we've said, this is a long-term play. This is not going away. And so make sure before you enter into that agreement and kind of link yourself to someone, you really understand what's behind the curtain. Because I know I have seen demos or I've seen vendors that are showing something that when asked or challenged, you realize they're just using off-the-shelf chat GPT capabilities that they've tweaked for the demo, but doesn't have all of the back end or all the diligence that you would like to see for a product that you're purchasing. Or as you mentioned, you may be able to get it cheaper just by going to OpenAI directly. So make sure you're asking those questions. That's a really good point. So I'll switch gears here a little bit to more of the data governance. And I think to frame it up, we've seen many organizations that are back on their heels when it comes to AI because they've already launched Copilot to their organization or they've already launched something. And then they're caught off guard by users accessing data or sensitive data being accessible from Copilot that they didn't expect users to have access to. And then they're coming to us and saying, can we pursue a rapid deployment of Microsoft Purview, or how do we get our data governance under control? And so what role does data governance or proper data structure play in terms of AI and AI readiness for organizations?
It's it's the foundational standard in my thought. It's where you need to be at, whether it's Purview, AWS Macy, a Google DLP. Any time that you can get in there and start cordoning off your data real estate, you're going to stand a much better chance across the board. Your stakeholders, your leadership will know where the data's at. And that is in all of our business now, the key critical item that's fundamental to everything that we do. Your email, your Exchange, your OneDrives, to speak more towards the Microsoft side. I am a fan of Purview. There is a lot of great stuff in there that you can do relatively quickly. It's the only one that I know that goes cross platform into Google Workspace and obviously as well as Microsoft. And having leadership and legal and HR help you define that is key to the organization's survival as well. This lowers risk, mitigates risk across the board for the organization. Statistically, I don't I don't see how companies can't move forward without doing something along those lines, especially if they're adopting AI, because then well, that's one less thing that's off your plate, and that is a pretty big project. Can't say enough about having that done.
Yeah, yeah. Like you said, it's just foundational, and I think the way I also phrase it is it's not only for the security risk and implications there that you highlighted, but just in terms of getting the most out of your AI. If your data governance and controls and management aren't in
Yeah.
place, it's not going to be able to unlock its full potential. So just out of the selfishness of getting your ROI, you got to have that foundational element in place. And then you touched on one other point I wanted to reiterate, which is the key stakeholders, right? That this is AI is not something that IT can run on their own with blinders on and kind of myopically focus on the best path to deliver. They need to be including folks from HR, from legal, from finance, and in some cases, especially as this becomes to be licensed and there's additional charges and fees. So this is one of those elements that's really going to force cross collaboration of key stakeholders and IT to reach across if they already haven't to those other departments.
Absolutely. Where information assurance, information security, and cybersecurity are all going, which is everybody plays a role in this now.
Yep.
And we're in the information age, and it's not just under IT. And I want to use Microsoft's product word literally, but I will. It's in their purview now. It's in everybody's role. It's adopted. We do training. We do all of this. AI is very similar to that. And in order to be effectively applied, you have to know what it is that you're using. Again, I guess why I lean into the training and education. That's why I try to do the lunch and learns that I do, is because we'll be in a safer place overall as a society, I believe, by good, safe, ethical use. And that starts with the people in leadership. I mean, we spend a lot of time at work with a lot of different people. I'd prefer just to all get along and use it wisely. We have to put these guardrails in, as I think you've used before that term, to make sure that we're going down the proper path to a return on investment. It's not just CISO, CIO, CTO roles anymore. Everybody needs to take some ownership, step up to the plate and not worry or fear, embrace it and look to it as a tool to make your life a little bit simpler. In some
Yeah.
aspects, simpler, maybe not in others, but more effective. I personally love it. I had my thoughts about it, but if you use it wisely, it's a great tool.
Yeah, I love what you said earlier of it should be a symbiotic relationship, not parasitic. It should really be a force multiplier for everybody out there. So, one thing I'm always surprised by is I feel like many organizations seem to fall in one of two extremes. They're either completely open and allow unfettered use of AI and don't really know what's being leveraged or in what capacity, or they're fully locked down and they've just said, hey, we're blocking it. We don't want AI used, which I still feel like life will find a way or folks will find a way to leverage it in some capacity to make their lives easier. So that idea of AI literacy and making sure that folks understand how to properly use this tool will not only help with addressing that concern, but it's important around adoption you mentioned, right? Because we know of many organizations that have done heavy investments in AI and they don't realize the ROI because there wasn't adoption. So I think the big takeaway is everyone needs to have an AI literacy plan or strategy. You have to have that within your approach to AI before you make a leap.
I like that. You put that much more succinctly than I was able to. An AI literacy plan. I love it. We're gonna market that.
Yes, yes. I think that it's a key component. And then, this was new to me. The ISO 42001 certification that's coming out around AI. I knew there was a NIST kind of framework that they were working on, or they've published. What are some other compliance controls or certifications that customers should be looking at or exploring when it comes to AI security?
42001 is specifically audit oriented for the
Okay.
ISO management systems. So it's with that in mind that it's more global in aspect and
Okay.
geared towards auditing, compliance, and governance. If a company were to be seeking accreditation for any one of those, I would suggest, especially for the 42001, if you're heavily involved and you're using multiple connectors, let's say out to both ChatGPT, Copilot, or Claude, whatever it might be, you might want to consider at least adopting that framework. What
Mm,
that will do for you, depending on whether you're regional or global, will start to protect you from some other aspects. We didn't really discuss privacy, but that is certainly one when it comes to your data lineage you need to be really aware of with a couple of key items. And these types of frameworks help you to a degree with those, although they're a little bit separate from the security. So anything that you developed in house or anything that you connected to for a client, you could then say was in line with that for accreditation. However, only you could be accredited for it. I don't know that I would pursue it unless I was heavily vested in the AI industry. If that's all I really did, absolutely 100%. If I were developing ML in house, yes, I would seek it as well.
okay.
And I don't know that I necessarily would have to have any of the others, although it would be a nice accoutrement, if you will. The
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
SOC
Just
2
for
Type
best
2
practices.
is beneficial. I was actually just reading a logistics research paper on how statistically, financially, you improve over time if you adopt the ISO 42001. So
Yeah.
your practices become cleaner and your AI therefore is able to produce as a result of that.
And now I understand it better that if I am developing my own, that's a great certification for them to pursue to make sure they have the right controls measures in place. And most importantly, I think just like a SOC 2 Type 2, it can be that badge of pride to their customer base or their user base to say, hey, you can now trust I've been accredited with this level of control or compliance.
Let me take it one step further. There has recently been the EU AI Act, and I think it actually passed. Canada has done one as well called the AIDA. A lot of those things have what I refer to as fines, like, say, HIPAA does for us. And if you're developing in another country like that, then you definitely want to be thinking along those lines too, because basically what the EU AI Act says aligns pretty well with the ISO 42001. And then you're less likely to be fined as a result of the lack of transparency in your methodology. Get really complex there on the compliance side, but there's kind of a series of events there that can really help you progress at a minimal outlay.
It's a really good point, especially for any international folks. That EU AI Act, they have to make sure that they're aligning to that. You bring up a good question. In many of the SaaS products or enterprise applications that are launching an AI element, when asked about the governance or the controls, I often see them just point to logging. Like, yeah, we're tracking every prompt and every response, and that's sufficient. Is the logging enough, or is there more that they should be doing?
I think that that's part of some of the nuance, some of the newer items that we'll be looking at is the monitoring and auditing of the auditors and the monitors. We're going to have to be ready to set up new alerting methodologies. What do we need to watch in these types of frameworks? Are there signatures of this type of attack or that type of attack, depending on what it is? I don't think that's enough. Part of our problem right now, too, is misnaming things. What's an agent? What's automation? What's an LMM versus machine learning? What are these models? People get really confused about that. Let's call it what it is and be straightforward about it. There's a lot of overuse of AI out there. And so that can also kind of be a misleading term that I think can affect how we handle and monitor these items down the road.
Yeah. Yeah, I've definitely heard that, especially in the early years. I mean, we still are in the early years of AI
Right.
ChatGPT is less than 3 years old, but AI is being thrown on everything, even when it's just a workflow or a script. I see
Right.
AI used much more liberally than it probably should in many cases. Jensen Huang called it the industrial revolution again, that it's that big of a change to human civilization. And I subscribe to that idea that it's here to stay, so to speak. It's not a flash in the pan. So folks need to be preparing for the long term. Don't get that FOMO, don't rush out, but
Right.
be planning on this is something that you have to work towards and settle into that idea that it's not going away, but you're going to have to iterate on this and continue to nurture it.
Absolutely. Some of the thoughts that I have back to the research that I did when I was working on my dissertation lend itself to just missing thought processes in the development of AI. And one of the general case scenarios that I'll bring up here involved a hospital that had a morphine drip. When they coded this, they didn't code it properly. And unfortunately, a sequence was pushed into the buttons that offered a life-ending event for one of the patients. And it's very sad to think about that for me, because I think with good thought and good development and good communication, that might not have happened. That sequence
Yeah.
wouldn't have been allowed to have been pushed in. And I know not everything is life threatening, possibly within hospitals as an exception.
Yeah.
Obviously, there is somebody on the table or in the bed. But I think about other things in flights, in our cars. This is pervasive in our environments. And if they're claiming AI, they should be transparent in its development. And that's one of the things that I really want to bring home here is that, again, in life, if we treat it with that respect level, that ethic, that safety and concern for others, I'm not so worried about getting in my car with its new AI as I might be otherwise. If people adhere to those ethics and those thoughts towards governance and approach. I know the godfather of AI said this, and I don't know who that guy is, but I've heard that name before. How did he get to be the godfather? I'm Italian over here, okay? I did 5 years with a 3-year-old during
You were
COVID
vying for that title? Okay.
research. I don't want, but I just thought, I think about it sometimes and I start laughing because it's like,
Yeah.
I did a lot of work to get my dissertation done during COVID, and I was like, somebody else got it already. Yeah. Anyways. But my point is that you see these people with all these weird names that say this, that, or the other. I want to vet that out. I want to know why they're saying these things. Where are you getting these numbers? Are they made up? Did you use your AI to make it up and get you a false link?
Taking it to an extreme like that of life or death, I think can kind of put it in perspective for folks, even though they may not be dealing with life or death. We need to make sure that your team and your resources are AI literate and are trained and understand both the implications of what it could do or the risks that it could have, but also just the ability to use it and leverage it in you to get that return on the investment. So we're coming up at the end of time here, Chris. If you had one piece of advice for CISOs out there or CIOs when it comes to AI today, what would that piece of advice be?
I think it's been pretty well stated throughout the entirety of this, but just know your fundamentals, know your business, know your stakeholders, know your clients. You have all of that. You can go through and formulate a pretty solid plan, an impact analysis for your company to make real movements towards having sustainable, safe, ethical AI in use that works most of the time. And that's all we
Yeah.
can really ask for, I think. It's like everything else. Just learn. Don't be afraid of it. Embrace it. It's like we've discussed too. It's going to be
Yeah,
here.
that's good. Yeah, great topics. Know your why, have a plan and a strategy about it, and don't be afraid because it's not going anywhere. It's going to be here to stay. Well, it's been absolutely terrific talking to you today, Chris. I really appreciate taking the time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Corey.